and it's something we'll touch on later, like the enjoyment part, because I think is also something I didn't have. Also, like I was going in and out and doing all this work, and I lost enjoying the process, enjoying and being proud of what I was putting out, because I couldn't associate to it more, and it started becoming to feel like work. So I was going from work to work to work to work, which defeats the purpose of me wanting to do this. What up, what up?
What up, what up?
All right, well, what's up, people? Welcome to another episode of Within, our podcast where we explore the creatives, the creative minds, and also kind of dabble into the mental health aspect of being a creative. I think that today we have a special episode. We're going to be diving into a little bit of a deeper topic today, but joining me to do so is my man Danilo. What's up, girl?
Yo, what's good, you guys? Danilo here, and funny thing about today, the first time in a very long time we've actually been able to have coffee chats together since coffee chats started.
Literally, and I apologize. I literally said, I think I mumbled. I said, "What's up, grow?" But I meant bro. What's up?
I mean, I'm down with growing anytime.
So yeah, you can tell there's lots of changes. If you guys are on the YouTubes right now, you guys are watching us on one camera. Typically, we're running like screen recordings. We're running like 2 cameras. We're having to sync everything in post. Today's going to be a very chill day. I feel like, at least from my perspective. Also, PSA, public service announcement. I finally got my couch. Let's go.
Yo, what's up? It's kind of surreal, isn't it, actually being able to sit down on this thing?
Yeah, I mean, 6
months coming.
Yeah, to give a little bit of context to whoever's listening or whatever, I've ordered this back in October, and it delays. Took 6 months for this to come in. So, yeah, I'm pretty stoked on this, to be honest. But yeah, today, obviously, part of our podcast Within, we have this segment that we call Coffee Chats, which is basically just Danilo and I hashing it out and having like just some authentic discussions in regards to mental health and maybe some also just topics of life that we find are relevant to our lives and probably can benefit a lot of people, a lot of creatives, a lot of people who are, having to manage a couple of things in their life, and this started obviously from Danilo and I just having discussions as friends, and we thought that we were pretty insightful, or at least we're having good discussions and good debates. So we wanted to kind of bring that forward to the audience and to people, and hopefully invite more discussion from everyone. So if you guys, are interested or find something that's interesting in the podcast, feel free to leave a comment on YouTube. Let us know what you think. Tag us on Instagram and stuff like that. Hop on the discussion. Like, this is 2 guys that are hosting the podcast, but it's more than just us. It's I think it's bigger than us. Mm-hmm. Speaking of something that's bigger than us, I think that today's topic is going to be pretty interesting. So how about you give us an idea of what we're going to look at today?
All right, today we are discussing the concept of burnout. So just a little definition I pulled from the internet. Burnout is a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. Long story short, basically you keep at something for a long time and you start to feel kind of burnt out and kind of empty, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll kind of make the differentiation here between the burnout we're talking about, like the general sense of burnout in terms of like, working for a long period of time and then feeling sort of emptiness and detachment, and the kind of burnout that you and I kind of have begun to experience, which is also like creative burnout, right? Because we come from a background of doing a whole bunch of stuff in the creative fields. Creative burnout, actually, pretty interesting. There are not a lot of scholarly articles written on creative burnout. Mm-hmm. A lot of blog posters, a lot of YouTube videos talking about creative burnout, which is a little different from regular burnout, where the manifestation of that is more how I should say, physical, mental, emotional, all that sort of stuff. Creative burnout is more just the lack of, or the inability to draw any more creative energy towards the work that you do. And it's this person who wrote the article that I pulled from, his name is Scott Birkin here. He compares it to a well that has gone dry. So, it's more similar to a symptom of general burnout, specific to creatives, as, essentially our identity relies on being creative, right?
Right. So I think the distinction we have to make is obviously burnout in itself and then creative burnout. I think that obviously, I don't know, I wouldn't say that, and people who aren't creatives can't experience creative burnout, because as I was telling you for one of the episodes, or just as a discussion, I think everyone is creative. Everyone
for sure.
has to be creative, right?
Right.
So I don't know that someone who's not necessarily doing creative stuff won't experience creative burnout.
That's true.
What are your thoughts?
I suppose if in the context of being a creative, where again, it's you sort of rely on the ability to be creative, to push what you do forward all the time. I suppose we're more likely to experience creative burnout versus, a person who doesn't necessarily identify as a creative, right?
Right.
And of course, yeah, it's just another it's just another kind of burnout. Of course, there's other sorts of burnout, like caregiver burnout. That's another one. That's more experienced in the medical field, right? But but you don't necessarily have to be a medical professional to experience caregiver burnout, right?
Right, and we also touched on our last episode with Marvin, which was compassion fatigue, which could also be, I would say, compassion burnout would likely be an interchangeable term.
Yeah,
maybe.
There's very similar things, actually.
Yeah. Because it's interesting, because when you read out the definition here, where it says it occurs when you feel this is burnout, it occurs when you feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet constant demands. So that's just burnout in itself, right?
Right.
So that can apply in so many different facets, I think, and aspects of life. So, and I would argue that it's something that's very relevant to both our lives right now.
Oh man, for sure. Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's break it down. What's the deal right now? Let's try to be as transparent as possible. Personally, as you know, I'm undergoing burnout right now. Right as we're talking right now. I'm not gonna lie, it has been extremely acute since I'd say September last year, August, September. But it's been a pretty long build up towards this thing, towards me reaching the point where I am right now. But yeah, what's your experience with burnout?
It's pretty interesting for me because I've experienced, different kinds of burnout. Before the one I'm about to delve into, my most prior experience from that was the burnout you experience from school, right? That was
And you're talking uni, correct?
Yeah, university.
Talking, okay.
Back when I was in nursing,
Okay.
which I mean, I would say general kind of burnout, because it's kind of the burnout you experience from being a student and having to balance 8 hours of schooling, 12 hours of studying, and then still trying to keep your head above water that way.
Right.
But as of recently, my most recent bout with burnout came probably, I'd say mid-February, is when I started noticing it. And it was the most, I guess, prominent burnout that I feel like I've experienced in recent history, to be fairly honest with you. So, I mean, for me, what it was, as you guys know, I'm part of Adventures Within Media, and I had, for me, a brand new field, brand new experience, a lot of different tasks, skills, and requirements that I'm, adapting to and trying to meet.
Which he's doing well, by the way, extremely well.
Oh, thank you very much. But yeah, all those new experiences, and how I was trying to balance this new lifestyle while, also balancing that with my previous lifestyle, and kind of melding and meshing the two. ended up with me experiencing burnout in a way that manifested in me feeling very detached from, I suppose, my emotions and what I was actually doing. It almost felt like I was working like a machine, almost like, like with no emotions attached. I kind of felt like a loss of awareness of what was happening on. Like the days began to bleed into each other. People would often ask me, like, hey, so like what day is it or what time is it? And I'd be like, I have no idea. Is it Monday, Tuesday? I'm not sure. Like, because we were at the point where, the weekend, like we were, work never stopped on the weekends, right? Work never stopped on my day offs from my 9 to 5 kind of thing. But yeah, let's see, lack of enthusiasm. That was one, and I just felt like, as quickly as I was growing with my experience, taking on all these new tasks, as I was growing as rapidly as my tasks were accumulating and all the new experiences, right? So in a very interesting way, the way that manifested, I think it came to a header when I was editing a podcast in a cafe, and mind you, this was like, the restrictions on staying at cafes and all that stuff had just begun to loosen here in Winnipeg. And I was there editing a podcast, and for a split second, I took my headphones off, and all of a sudden, I became hyper aware of everything that was going on around me, every conversation that was happening, and it's like I couldn't put a stop to the information that was like, I couldn't put a filter on the information that I was receiving, and then all of a sudden, I had a freaking panic attack in the middle of a coffee shop, and I'm just like, I need to get out of here. And I needed to just think about what the heck had happened, because I don't remember the last time. Well, actually, the last time I had a panic attack was back in university, back in nursing, right? So, yeah, that's a super interesting and also humbling experience, because it was telling me just how much I had tried to take on, and maybe had not given enough credence to how much capacity I actually had to take on everything that I was trying to take on. But yeah, that was how mine manifested in the last little bit. I'm sure you want to get into how it went for you.
I mean, yeah. So you guys join AWMI, you'll get burnouts.
No, you won't.
Panic attacks. That's what we do best here.
Trust me, it's not part of the requirements for joining. It's just
but it's part of the job description.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting, because that, I think in itself, again, I didn't go through this, you did, but it feels like it's more like you said, a panic attack or maybe an anxiety attack at that point, which might have been brought on by the burnout, but it's not, I don't think we've ever heard of like a burnout attack, but that's pretty extreme in terms of how that has like seriously like just peaked to one certain moment, because you haven't, besides the schooling time, you haven't really experienced something like that, right?
I would say that because of the burnout I was experiencing, it allowed things to get to the point where it would manifest in a panic attack. And I think at that point I was just kind of like, okay, yeah, something's like wrong and I have to do something about it. Yeah, I think that was the cue, to say like, okay, this isn't something I can ignore anymore. You know what I mean?
Right. So would you say, sorry, I'm still curious, would you say that this is something that you felt like you had like many little moments where you were feeling like you're like overwhelmed, and this would just like pop up from time to time, and this one just was a really acute one? Or was this like, you were just like, okay, yeah, I'm a little stressed right now, I'm unable to feel fulfilled, I'm not feeling, attached to what I'm doing, and all of a sudden it came out of nowhere?
It's very interesting that you asked that question, because like now that I'm actually thinking about it, there were probably many little moments where I'd be looking at how many days we're going to go, everything that we had planned going on, and how I was trying to balance my own life with the companies and all that stuff. And probably, yes, like you said, very like little moments that would be like, oh, wow, like I'm kind of overwhelmed, but whatever. I'm already in this. I'm already doing it. There's still work to be done. And I would just kind of like put that back on the back burner, not really directly address the fact that I was being overwhelmed. Right. And because I felt like I left that ignored for so long, it could manifest in a panic attack, like literally. Because when I was having that panic attack, like what was going through my head wasn't like, oh my God, I have so much work and I'm never going to get this done and I have this and this to do. What manifested in my head, or what was going on in my head, was like literally like, you know, like I said, just an unfiltered flow of information flooding my brain and causing my body to react in a way that generated a flight or fight response. And that's when I was just like, I need to remove myself from where I was having the panic attack. And I mean, and I didn't really go into it, but basically had to go into my van, literally like wait until my breathing calmed down, and literally just started crying. And I was like, why are you, and like the voice in my head's like, why are you crying? What's going on? What's happening? Why are you freaking out? And I'm like, I have no idea. Right. And yeah, so like I said, it was just, as you identified, like small little moments of like me feeling overwhelmed, but not addressing it, not doing anything about it, and not like taking care of myself, that allowed that panic attack to manifest.
Yeah. I mean, we're no mental health experts. We're not experts in our field or anything. This is just a discussion. So I can't really like, my mind, right now, what it's doing right now is me trying to like figure out like exactly like what happened, where did it cause it. It's like me trying to analyze it, right, and trying to provide some types of tips, which is, I feel like, what a lot of people do. But I feel like a lot of burnout, I think, has to do with a lot of self-reflection. You know, you only know what's actually going on in your head, what you're capable of,
right? Where's
your limit, kind of thing, right? Because we'll hopefully dive into it a little bit later, but I feel like burnout is caused by reaching a limit. That's what burnout would be. It's like your body or whatever, your mind telling you you've reached a limit. And it's also interesting you brought up the fight or flight aspect of it, because not that there's anyone that's better, but I feel like you might have chosen flight in this scenario, while, as we'll get into, I chose fight.
Right.
And I feel like I've done that a lot in my life, which is not necessarily a bad or good thing. You know, there's, I think, ups and downs to both, but
it's very interesting that you mentioned the flight or fight, because actually I had a conversation about what had happened to me with one of my friends afterwards. And, literally a panic attack is the generation of a flight or flight response. Right. And whether or not you flight or fight, like the physiological response that's going on in your body is adrenaline is being shot through your body. And instead of, doing what most people would do when they have adrenaline going through them, which is like either run or fight, you're in a state where you're not doing anything because there's no immediate threat, right? There's no actual perceived threat in front of you, and it's all just going on in you. So you just have adrenaline coursing through you, and you're just dealing with the effects of that adrenaline, which is like, the breathing, the crying, all that kind of stuff.
Let me just correct. You said there's no actual perceived threat. I think there is no actual threat. There's a perceived threat.
Oh, yeah. No, actually, yeah.
Sorry, to catch you on that. But
right.
Yeah, no, that's and as you guys can tell, this is literally how Danilo and I talk all the time. We'll catch each other on stuff and like, oh, that's interesting that you said that. Oh, that's interesting. This is why we started a podcast, because we felt like, people would like to listen to us mumble about stuff in life. But super interesting stuff. Just to contrast a little bit my experience. So like you mentioned, yours has been like probably, I guess, more recent or more short term, let's put it that way, in comparison, if we can put it that way.
If we were comparing to you, then yes, I would say at least in frequency, like I could probably name 2 times where it's happened like at that point.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like I've had those mental breakdowns like a lot. Like mine also, I would say, really started when I was in university. I remember my first semester, I was taking this course called Discrete Math. And I thought I was good at math at the time, but clearly I wasn't. This was transitioning from a small 300 student French high school from the country, or sorry, not the high school, the entire school from kindergarten to 12th grade had 320 kids. Transitioning from a French education system to a university where we had, it wasn't the biggest university, it was UW, but being taught in English, even all the basic terminology I was now unfamiliar with, because I just never heard it in a classroom. And so I was having difficulties catching on to basic comprehension, and it's not the easiest course, but I was having mental breakdowns 3 to 4 times every week. Like every week. Yeah. I could, I would like come home and I would just bawl my eyes out and be like, Mom, I can't do this. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I feel retarded. And it's funny because the main topic of that course is an integer, and I didn't even know what an integer was until like 3/4 done the class. Like
oh my goodness.
At 3/4 way through the class, like integer comes up like 3 times or 4 times in a paragraph, and I didn't know what it was. So 3/4 way through the class, I just decided it was a good idea to look up what an integer was. And lo and behold, I was like, oh, that makes sense. But it started, went on a little bit of a tangent there, but it started when I was in university. I would get these ups and downs, and a lot of it was just pressure based, I guess. But I was very busy. I was doing judo and studying at the same time, but my life was pretty steady for the most part. I didn't have to worry too much.
Right.
Obviously there's emotions, girls, etc. Life, but finances didn't really have to worry about it because I wasn't working and wasn't doing too much. I was focused on judo and studies. But it's really when I started like the creative journey of like making music and creating photos and videos, and when you start to take it onto a serious path and you want to take this into like a business, then you start really self-doubting, is putting a lot of pressure and like always want to do more. And when I started doing photos and videos, I was actually a student at the time, right?
Right.
A lot of free time. Don't feel like going to class, you can skip class. Rarely would skip class, just putting it out there. But, you know, you can if you want to. And you have like 3 classes a day, even on packed days. I mean, for a business student, obviously science students, I think they have labs and everything. It's different scenario. But for the most part, students have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to time management than most people do who are working a full-time job, right? So at the time, I was able to just like turn around projects for clients. I'd get like 1 client like every 3 months kind of thing, if even. And I would be able to turn around projects really quickly.
Right.
And so I'd always be looking for more stuff. I'd be making my own stuff that I was proud of, whether it were vlogs, just shooting photos and posting consistently on Instagram. And then I got a job, and it was still a flexible job, so I could still pick up stuff. And then I got a full-time job that was like really strict. And then I moved into the city, which anyone who's planning on moving outside of their home, you'll realize there's a lot of things you have to do on your own at that point. And I wanted to take on a lot of those responsibilities, which was one of the reasons why I wanted to move alone. But with all that coming all together all at once, and then me not being able to feel creatively satisfied because I wasn't putting as much time into what Vince Blaze wants to do as like my music, my own photos, my travels, etc. And I was focusing more on getting clients, so weddings and stuff like that. I just, as you can tell, it's like a slow ramp that was coming in. And mind you, like there'd still be moments where I felt overwhelmed. So I'd like have like a peak, like a just like peak, all of a sudden mental breakdown every now and then.
Right.
And I just noticed that this has happened like way too often now.
Right.
It's like it's happening like every other week, you know, where it's like a major crash where I'm just like, I can't do this. Like just the other day, being fully transparent, 2 days ago, Danilo calls me and he's like, hey bro, how's your day? And I'm like, bro, I think I want to postpone everything that's happening right now. I want to put everything on hold because I just can't mentally handle it. And that's the kind of like negative state I get into. Like I think Danilo can probably, you know, confirm this, but like I get into like an extreme low where I'm just like, I want to give up on everything. Everything's going terrible. I don't really get like suicidal. I don't want to put that kind of word out there, but I don't get to that point, but I just, you know, I get to a point where like I want to give up on everything. Everything's the worst. And I think this is also stemmed with maybe some past traumas that have arisen during that time and during life, and that we haven't necessarily taken the time to breathe and just deal with or sit in with or accept or acknowledge. But yeah, so just giving you contrasting between your experience, I feel like mine has been slowly building for a long time. And because of that slow build, because the threshold of stress is just continuously going higher, now it's a lot easier to just whoop, because it's like if your glass is like this full, it's a lot easier for you to just grab the glass and accidentally spill something. And I feel like that's what it is. It's like at the top of the cup, and it's like every time there's like one little thing that doesn't go right, it just spills over.
Okay.
And you know what I mean? That's my experience.
Just an interesting thing, because when you were making the comparison to, you know, the various peaks that you experience, I'm just wondering if you think that would be more burnout, or would that just be, you know, overstress, right? Because burnout is sort of like a prolonged situation. Like it occurs after a prolonged situation.
Right.
And then the actual entering the burnout itself is also a prolonged thing. I mean, obviously it depends relative to the individual, right? Because you're comparing yours as an accumulation of things that have happened over years, probably since your time as a university student, right?
Yeah.
And whereas mine, I would say, is just probably I would say as a result of a period of maybe I'd say a couple months, right?
Right.
It's just the fact that those peaks came so often, or with, I guess, increasing frequency, right? I mean, I'm just trying to make the comparison between the two because, like, I guess the way that I kind of like see how I experienced it, it was more like there was one point where I called you and I'm just like, I'm not sure if I'm enjoying anything at the moment, right? And that's when I kind of was beginning to think, okay, maybe something might be off, right? Whereas, and like I said, using my panic attack as sort of a cue rather than a, oh, this is like, you know, like this is the burnout. Like, I think at that point it made me kind of reflect on, okay, how long have I been like this versus, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, and it's a good distinction to make. Like, arguably, again, we're not scientists here. We're not like.
But we are advocates.
Yeah, we're advocates for mental health, but we're not like experts in this field. But like, are we actually experiencing burnout? Can we say this is burnout? Again, subjective. What is burnout according to this definition? Yeah, we fit the criteria.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that when you're making those distinctions, I think it's like the burnout is happening because these like panic attacks or mental breakdowns are happening at a frequency that is now seeming like it's one prolonged time.
Right.
Because it's so often, it doesn't feel like it's actually like it's almost like happening almost like on a daily basis. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which now feels like every single other day I'm going through like having to deal with like, oh, I don't feel happy with what I'm doing. And he said, that I think that was a good determination of whether that's burnout or not. Like,
I wait. I just want to make the quick distinction that maybe I said I didn't say I wasn't happy with what I was doing. It's I couldn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because actually, I'm very happy with what I'm doing with AWMI, with my music, everything I'm doing creatively. I'm actually very happy with like, you know, my position in what I'm doing, what I'm learning, and what I'm able to do. Yeah, but the key thing there was my inability to enjoy the detachment, the loss of emotions. And that's when I was getting concerned, you know. And I think that's something actually you've touched on quite a few times too in past conversations where, you know, we've talked about how like, you know, man, like we haven't even set the time aside to enjoy some of our achievements, like
or appreciate. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think that, you know, that distinction of, and it's something we'll touch on later, like the enjoyment part, 'cause I think is also something I didn't have also. Like I was going in and out and doing all this work and I lost enjoying the process, enjoying and being proud of what I was putting out because I couldn't associate to it more and it started becoming to feel like work. So I was going from work to work to work to work, which defeats the purpose of me wanting to do this.
Right.
You know, because I'm trying to actively become free of my job. You know, I don't want a full-time job. That's my goal.
Right.
Hopefully my boss doesn't hear this because I'm going to lose my job. But I'm trying to make this like my full-time thing because I want to be able to do what I love to do and enjoy doing on a full-time basis. But if I don't, you know, if I'm not able to enjoy it, then what's the point? Anyways, I don't want to go too much on a tangent, but that's kind of like my thoughts on like the enjoyment aspect of it and losing that. So
right.
We are struggling with the
pop filter. No,
yeah. Do you want to switch it back to where it was?
No, don't worry about it. I'll just position it on top. It's all good. Don't worry about it.
All right, sorry guys, technical difficulties here. Yeah, so you know, we talked about our experience and a little bit touched on what was the actual cause of it, but what do you think actually caused the burnout? Like what are some of the things that like lead to burnout in your experience?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, like again, by nature of its definition, prolonged stress, right? So you put yourself in an environment where a lot of things can stress you out, and that can be internal, external, right? So for me, the external factors were, you know, One, the accumulation of work, coming from.
Join AWMI, you'll get lots of work.
Okay, maybe I should say not the accumulation of work per se, because as a music producer, I've definitely had weeks where I'm like, oh, there's a lot on the plate today. Oh, there's this event coming up. Oh, I have to go attend this event. Oh, I have to DJ here and there, right? And I would never feel, between the time between those things, I would never feel stressed, or I would never feel like I'm not enjoying this, or I would never feel detached, right? I think it was the accumulation and the intensity of the work, right? And not to mention, again, if anybody can remember, I had talked about this in our very first coffee chats, but I was a very, wait and see and play by ear kind of guy. And I have very quickly become an individual that sticks to planning, sticks to schedules, and sticks to trying to get stuff done in a timely manner and sticking to due dates. And that's a lot of because of the infrastructure we've been trying to create within the company, right? And it's gone to the point where I'm getting to I don't like it when things don't go to plan or something is not planned.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so adapting to that also, might have contributed to things. So again, just the accumulation of work on top of the fact that I also work a 9 to 5, full time pretty much.
We both do, yeah.
But I tend to leave work at work, I tend to leave work at work, you know what I mean? But as being a creative and being in freelance, technically the work doesn't stop, right?
Never does.
Yeah. There's always something new to do, and you can't leave it quote unquote at work, right? So again, part of that too is like we touched on earlier, not being able to internalize what you've done, right? Not being able to be like, hey, we just finished this podcast. Awesome. Go us. Let's take some time to think about what we're doing. And I mean, sometimes we keep ourselves accountable and pat ourselves on the back and be like, hey man, good job on this and this and that. But immediately we'd be like, all right, what's next? What are we doing next? What's the plan for this week?
And that's interesting because I don't know that that's a bad thing. You know what I mean?
I mean, initially it isn't. It really isn't. I think being excited for what's to come is a motivator, is it not? Right?
Yeah, and I also think that people get caught up in being, yay, look at me, dropped a new track, dropped a new podcast, and then you don't see them for the next 3 years, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're so hyped on what they accomplished, meanwhile they're too busy actually putting in the work.
Right.
Which I think might be the mentality that might lead, it might have rubbed off on you. Because I come from that mentality,
Right.
Japanese mindset. They never celebrate anything. Maybe that's an exaggeration. But anyways, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I thought
I mean, to touch on that, it's not that we didn't celebrate. I don't think we just allowed ourselves enough time to, because I said, like I said, we kept trying to keep ourselves accountable by being like, well, good job on this, and good work on this, and maybe taking a couple moments here and there to just actually attempt to, understand hey, we put this out, we put that out, congratulations on your new track. But then just as soon as we were done that, we're already planning the next phase and planning the next set of tasks. You know what I mean? It wasn't enough time to internalize. We tried to. I think we did our best to try to in order to keep ourselves accountable. And this is something we actually caught early on, but again, didn't allow ourselves enough time to. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It makes sense. That's something we need to work on. I sound like a terrible boss or whatever, but I don't know if timing is I think it's the intense. I think to me personally, when I hear that, I don't think it's the amount of time, it's the amount of energy, because what we do as human beings is we associate ourselves to our flaws and our mistakes, and we put a lot of energy in being like, oh, I messed up, I made a huge mistake, this is terrible. But we don't put a lot of energy in, oh, we did an amazing podcast, this is amazing. Right. And like I said, my mindset is always to put down that kind of energy, because I don't want to get wrapped up in it. But I think that, if we not just saying because we would be like, okay, good job, we did a good podcast and I'm feeling pretty good about it. That's cool. Good job. Pat ourselves on the back and we'd go on
with your day, kind of thing.
Yeah. So instead of being this is amazing, I love this, I'm going to again, I don't want to say like I'm going to treat myself to something, because I think that that's taking in external validation, which isn't a whole other topic. But I feel like, again, there's just not enough energy of being like, oh man, we're so hyped about this podcast. Like our last podcast with Marvin, if you guys haven't checked it out, you guys need to check it out, because like there was some pretty cool stuff that happened during that podcast. And I wouldn't say we brushed it off, but it's definitely not something we spend as much time as compared to when we're like, oh man, we made a mistake on a couple of things, right?
And you know what? Yeah, actually, now that I think about it.
So not the timing, the energy, like the concentration of energy.
Right. No. I completely agree with that. And just like, for example, like I don't spend, I'd say if I could break down my thought process during the day, it's not like I spend 8 hours a day thinking about how good a job I did on this and that. I probably spend like 5 minutes of that here and there celebrating something that I've done, and then the rest of my time thinking about
how to fix or how to approach the next task.
Yeah, or actually pursuing the tasks, or thinking about the next.
What do you got to do? What do you got to do? Yeah.
And is that just the human condition of being like as like a creative or a freelancer or something like that? Do you think that's just something that just comes with the job, or?
I think that thinking about the next task comes with a job. I think that that's something that, when you're owning what you're doing, your craft, your business, your passion, that's going to come naturally. Right. But I think that finding time or ways to appreciate what you're doing is something that we need to work on, and maybe we can develop, because it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's huge, but it does have to be something that's significant to us.
Right.
Because to me, the problem is, because again, I want to avoid getting wrapped up in all this. I don't want to like emotionally be like, yay, and all of a sudden like I've dropped like this and I feel amazing and nothing happens. But now the opposite is happening. I'm not celebrating enough, and so I'm not enjoying it, and so I don't want to do it anymore, and nothing happens. You know what I mean? It's literally the same result. So I think that we need to find some ways to because to me it's like the act of getting out there I'm proud of. Right. So I feel like that should be enough for me to like have out there. It's like I created a song, so why should I have like host a party because I dropped a song? Like I don't need to celebrate it. Like the song's out there. I'm so happy it's out there. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I posted a dope ass video. Now it's out there. I'm proud of it. That was the goal. That is my celebration. Right. So that's where my mentality comes from, of like, no, we don't need to like, why should I take like shots for putting out a video? Like the goal was to put the video, it's out now, so I'm happy, Yeah. So that, I don't know. We're kind of skipping ahead in the part of how to fix our burnout problem, but
we're reflecting on like,
so much reflection.
Yeah. One question, I think another thing that like, and this ties into obviously the last topic on like, not celebrating, but also, and also having too much work. But again, like as creatives and as freelancers, doing a lot of freelance work, you try to take on as much work as you can, right? Without maybe perhaps thinking to yourself, do I have the capacity for this, or do I have the time for this, or can I fit this in my schedule, or trying to just desperately cram it in there, right? So, and this is something that me and Vince have talked to at length, like over and over and over again in the last couple of days, but we tend to say it, to not know how to say no, not know how to, kind of decide, okay, do we have the capacity to take this task on, this client, do I have enough time to make beats for this person? Do I have time to, can I bring this person into the studio to record, like, every other day kind of thing?
And I also feel like it's because now that, like, for example, like when I was doing little video shoots for myself, I could post a vlog, and when you post a vlog, you had to do a thumbnail. So I knew I had thumbnails. I would post a vlog, and then I would share it on Instagram, and that's it. But now, and like, for example, would make like a little beat, maybe put a little reel on Instagram, or a little 15-second video loop, put it on Instagram, and that was it. But now our expectation of what quality looks like has gone up.
Oh yeah.
I think that's where I get tied up with a lot of this, is because, so for example, we're posting a podcast episode. What do we have to do? Can you break down what we have to do for this?
Okay. All right. Step 1, like decide on a topic. Step 2, like create an outline of like what we're going to talk about, even if we're having a casual conversation like in coffee chats. Step 3, like pick a time slot, right? Step 4, get the equipment ready. Step 5, like, that's just 5.
Shoot the thing,
Yeah,
right?
shoot the thing.
And then there's the whole post-production aspect.
Post-production is another thing.
Which Danilo is now going to be taking on a lot of this, but there's like, we're going to be releasing like IGTV snippets of this actual podcast, which might be in right now. I don't know if
this might be the one.
This might be the one. But, we have to post this. We have to create a thumbnail. We have to create a thumbnail for the YouTube. We have to create captions. We have to create timestamps, just because we want this to look as professional as, because this is, like I was telling you earlier when we were discussing, we are internalizing this. We want to make this come true.
Right.
We need this to look like a legit thing, because it's legit. We're putting in time, money, and effort into this, and we're trying to make this succeed. And so the expectations of quality has gone up. And because of that, there's so many other things that you have to do, so many other little tasks that are assigned to it. And so now when I'm saying, oh yes, I can take on this project, I'm forgetting to associate exactly what goes in the back of it, which is why now I've increased a lot of my prices when I'm charging clients. It's because I know the back end and all the organization structure that goes into it, everything else that goes behind the communication, everything that goes in. Because I'll give you another example. Had a massive client in January and February, which kind of led to my burnout. I was having massive mental breakdowns weekly, and Danilo can attest to that.
Oh man, yeah.
And it was just I wasn't able to enjoy it. It was a positive experience overall, but there's a lot of stress involved. But that being said, now the client, we've already completed the project. All the videos are released, but they're asking me to do more stuff for free. They want me to download their entire library of videos from their Vimeo account and post it onto their Instagram and YouTube video account, and then repost the videos that we just did so that they end up at the top. This is stuff that I wasn't expecting. Me saying no, or me being like, hey, do you want to charge? Can I charge you for this? It's going to come off as cheap, but it's something that I didn't expect coming along with the project. And one thing that I think that I have not integrated into my life well is this Japanese concept called YOYØ, which I know you're going to like because it's Japanese, but YOYØ is basically, I'll give an example. When you're going to the city, if your appointment's at 9 and it takes you half an hour to get there, what time do you leave by?
I don't know. What time do you leave by?
Well, what time would you leave by?
Okay, so I'm sorry. If
appointment's at 9,
okay,
and it takes you half an hour to get from where you are to the appointment.
An extra half an hour before that, actually, just in case, just as a buffer.
So that's a lot of buffer.
Yeah.
But that buffer would be what we call YOYØ, which is time, basically, like extra time.
Yeah. Right.
Spare time for things to happen. What if there's a train? What if there's construction? What if there's an accident?
Right.
So that way you're not on a steering wheel going like, oh my God, I'm going to miss my appointment,
Right.
Which is how I run my life 90% of the time.
Yeah.
So this, I think, adding YOYØ into your life, adding spare room. So being like, okay, if I'm going to take on this project and I think that it's going to take 3 weeks, likely going to take 5 to 6, knowing those consequences, being able to anticipate, which I think we're doing now. Like when I told you, like, we're going to be trying to post every other week. So we have another week of buffer to be able to manage weekly stresses, weekly events that are coming up. So sorry, went a little bit on a tangent, but I think that's why it's like, it's not, we try to make time for everything, but we could originally fit in everything that we want to take on. Yeah. But now, because what we want to take on has another meaning to us in terms of quality and what we actually have to put into work, I think that's what's causing a lot of like the discrepancy.
Yeah, no, for sure. And just to add on that, like, I remember when you're dealing with a client that you had mentioned previously, and while also trying to run AWMI and everything like that, and I could see it and I could tell in your voice that, like, it was just like, geez, man, like he's just barely hanging in there trying to, just, and again, tying into Burnout, like that was one of the things that I noticed pretty quickly, maybe about 2 weeks into you, like the further you got into the project, right? Then again, also I saw you almost like every other day, but like you could tell that it's just like, there was a drain in the energy, like it was so evident, right?
Yeah.
And while still trying to take on a project that like took that amount of time versus, and still trying to, like, work your job and also run this company, right? Like just for me, that was a very evident observation, right? Yeah. So other thing that the other point I wanted to mention here was like again, like one of the thing, focusing too much on the future and
Long term, yeah.
and not the other thing though is not being present.
True.
Uh, I actually, again, and this comes with our nature of like, you know, planning ahead. Like most of our planning, we have we go like what, a couple weeks ahead, right? For most of the planning that we have in the infrastructure.
If not a month or more, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And so, I mean, one of our favorite key phrases is "job's not done."
Job's not done.
Right? But at the same time, it began to make me, I mean, just taking from my own experience, I remember sitting in front of my, when I was really beginning to understand that something was off. I remember just trying, I remember I had a bit of time during that week in February where I was experiencing burnout, and I was like, okay, I have this small time window. I'm going to try to do something for myself. Like I'm going to try to make a beat and try to make some more music, or trying to just come up with something that has nothing to do with what I've been experiencing for the rest of the week. But the only thing in my mind is like, I still have this to do. I still have that to do. This is still coming up. And the thing, and I think I remember one of the tougher days that I had talked to Vince about is like, my days off are usually Thursdays and Saturdays. And, incidentally, Saturday was, we had this extremely busy Saturday, and I just remember thinking to myself, man, that did not feel like a day off at all. Like, and then, you know, and then I have a shift on Sunday, and I was already thinking, okay, well, I already have work coming up on Sunday, so what am I going to have time for myself for the rest of Saturday at like 8 p.m. Saturday night, right?
See, and that's funny, is because like if you were able to enjoy the moment, that moment of doing that busy Saturday would feel like a day for you, time for you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like for me, I'm like, well, I should be enjoying this. And so I don't need a day off. Mm-hmm. For example, right now, I'm taking a day off today to be able to record this podcast, working.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying this, but when I get back to work, is it going to feel like I had a day off? See, that's the debate. Because I literally feel, I was telling you, like I go from work to work to work to work to work. Yeah. And I literally feel like I've not had a weekend to just have fun, because when we have a weekend open, what do? We fill it up.
Yep.
We go see people. Yep. And then you never had time to yourself. So again, this goes into habits, because I think that's one of the reasons, if I can take over this part, of why I feel like my burnout has come, what actually caused the burnout. Mm-hmm. It's that mental habit of being uneasy with having nothing to do. So I told you about this, you know, when a project's going slow, something's not happening, instead of like putting in the time and working on it, what I'll do is, okay, let's just go find something else to do. And then you start something else. And just like I told you earlier, when you start something else, now that means another level of quality. And so all these other elements build up, and like you see that vicious cycle coming in. Yeah. And then that goes slow, and then all something coming in. And guess what? Projects are not getting done. Less feeling like you're accomplishing something. You feel you're not connecting to what you're doing. You're not appreciating what you're doing, because things are not coming out as much. Right. You're not putting as much effort because things are turning in. And again, it's too long, big projects. So again, one of the things that sounds stupid, but like posting on Instagram consistently is like one of my, if I'm posting on Instagram consistently, I'm happy. It sounds stupid, but because I'm able to express who I am on a consistent basis. But when I'm not, which I haven't been, I've posted 3 posts or 4 posts now in the last 3 months.
Oh, I've done two in a month.
Right. But I mean, this is something like, yeah, okay. But I'm just saying personally, like I really enjoy that. I like you posting music on a consistent basis, right? Releasing music on a consistent basis. Right. You know, I feel like is something that I feel like I can't do enough now. And so I'm not enjoying the process. And so things that I actually want to do aren't coming out, and things that I'm actually supposed to be doing aren't coming out. And like you said, you mentioned like when you're doing something you enjoy, like making a beat, you're always thinking about what do you got to do next? What do you got to do next? And so it sucks the enjoyment out of even that. Yep. So that's the situation we're in right now.
So you talked about the vicious cycle, like why do you think that like when things go slow, your attention immediately goes towards starting something new, you know, which then inevitably may lead to you like not completing it? Like, well, why do you think that instead of just going out and completing the thing that you start a new task? Is it like a motivation thing or?
I think that this word "I'm busy" has become something that's way too commonly used. And I think it's like being busy is something that people now flex. Oh, I'm busy. Oh, I'm so busy. Like I've got this going on. I've got this going on. And to be honest, it might be due to insecurities. Like I love saying that to people, you know, when they ask me, when I'm not too crazy busy, I love saying, like when people ask me, oh, so what are you doing this weekend? Oh, you know, I'm recording a podcast and we went for a run and I'm editing some photos for a client. And then the next day I have a shoot with a massive client. They're hiring us from Ontario. And I'm going to be editing some documentaries. And then the next day someone looks at you and be like, oh shit, this guy's got his life together. Like, oh my God, he's doing big things, right? So,
but it's like the opposite.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the result when you do that on a consistent basis, like isn't as pretty and perfect, but yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why. It's because when things aren't going like perfect, they're not progressing as the way you'd want them or as quickly as you'd want them. And this is probably tied to impatience. I feel like there's a lot of like unease where I'm like, oh, if someone asks me what I'm doing, like I'm not thinking about what people are going to ask me. That's not what I'm thinking. But I think my body automatically says, okay, I'm not being productive. That's where it is. I'm not being productive. That's where it is. That's where Yes Theory podcast. Yeah, that's where it ties in.
That's right. The problem with productivity. Yes.
That's a podcast by Yes Theory. You guys need to check it out. The problem with productivity, and they talk about burnout. And this is kind of where this whole discussion kind of stemmed from, to be honest. But
I wish people could see the epiphany we just had.
Oh man,
that are listening to the podcast and not watching it on YouTube.
Yeah, and it's literally trying to be productive, and you don't feel like. And the doctor or whatever that they interviewed in that podcast mentioned it, right? She was like, you want to be productive all the time, and so you take on more stuff, but then you can't even do like the simplest tasks, and so you're not productive.
Right. What was it called? Aaron
mundane?
It's like, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about errand paralysis, like when you when you become so busy with everything that doing the most mundane tasks become nearly impossible to complete, or they keep getting pushed back further and further and further.
Okay, let me break this down because I feel like I have a good experience on this, because this is literally how my mind works 24/7. Okay, so the mail is right there, literally not even 2-minute walk outside of my door, right? It's right there. In my head, I'm like, okay, so what's the best time to go get the mail? Because if they're there at 11, then I'm going to be timing. Okay, so I think I might go for a run around 11:30, and then that way I can go get the mail at that time. I can't just go walk out there for 2 minutes and get the mail.
Right.
Like there has to be something that's associated with it. And so if there's nothing, like for example, if I'm like, oh, I'm tired, I'm not going to go run, then I don't get the mail.
Yeah.
And that's literally the vicious cycle that happens in my head all the time about certain things. Checking my finances. Okay, so if I check my finances, then I need to add my finances into my expense sheet and my budget and see where I'm going at and doing all this analysis. And again, it's like those expectations, kind of with those projects, those expectations of how the quality of the perfect checking my finances or grabbing the mail is supposed to go. It's supposed to be efficient at 100% of the time, which then creates a dissonance in the entire system, because you can't be efficient all the time. And sometimes it's just about doing it and like doing the task and not trying to be like time everything perfectly. And why am I trying to time everything perfectly? It's because there's too much on the plate. So again, vicious circle. So that's kind of like how I'm noticing my head being like, dude, just like check your finances. Like just go grab the mail, like check your emails, like open up the email, but it's like, oh, if I open up the email, then I'd be able to answer, and I know that I want to answer in a certain way. And so I need to be in the right mindset. Procrastination gets into that. So like it's so many elements that are coming into play.
Geez, yeah. I mean, like I can relate to that to a certain habit I used to have, where it's just like, if I was going to step out of the house, then I better damn well be doing something good with that time. Like,
Yeah.
Or if I'm going to be at home, if I'm going to be home, I know I have this time and this time slot, and what am I going to get done in that time? And and then you try to cram as much as possible in there. Like, I mean, if I'm my actual job too, it's just like I don't see a purpose in doing stuff outside of the routine if it doesn't help forward like what I'm trying to accomplish already, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and to be honest, where I think it stems from me is I lived outside the country. So every trip we made into the city, we would pack as much as we can, because it's 40 minutes one way. So like we're not going to go we're not just going to go to, I don't know, to the mall. We're going to go to the mall when we need to go to the dentist, when we need to go grab. We're also going to pick up something at, Valley Village or whatever. Like we're going to make it a trip. Like it's a full day trip. And yeah, I think that's there. I mean, obviously efficiencies in the system is something we always look for, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but when you're spending more time trying to find efficiencies rather than actually doing the things, I think that's when the problems come.
It's very interesting because I literally remember the last time I was doing something that wasn't directly affecting my work. And I could not think of anything but like, I'm wasting my time at the moment.
Same.
Like,
yes.
I remember heading, and I mean, this is sort of like, I remember a family member of mine needed to be driven around, right? And that, I mean, going back and forth and the time frame between those two things and then completing the task and then coming home, like that took up about 4 hours of my day. And the only thing I could think of was like that I could use that 4 hours for something that I needed to do for myself. You know what I mean? And I feel honestly guilty because like I'm trying to help out a family member, but then it's not really, contributing to the things that I have going on. You know what I mean? And and I didn't like that I was thinking like that, but at the same time, it's just like that's how I was gonna say busy, but like that's how wired to be productive we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's also like I would almost, now that I'm listening to it, it's also like tied into our values. What do we value? Right? Because right now I feel like we're trying to value maybe too much on the success or the results.
Right.
Maybe we're looking too much at the results and not being like, hey, we had fun. We had a good discussion today. We got out of our comfort zone. We put out a podcast, which wasn't necessarily perfect, but we recorded at my place. It was fun. It was casual. We had a good discussion. And, like, I feel like our values are so shifted towards maybe areas of our life that we're not necessarily wanting to put them there, but because we're serious about this and, we're looking at what the media puts out there, or I don't know, I'm literally just speaking in my mind right now, but I think that might be tied in is our values. Because what are we valuing? Because if you value time with your parents and you're like, okay, let me set aside 4 hours for my dad or your mom or whoever, I don't know whoever the member was, if you're putting time aside and you're like, okay, let's put time for this person because I want to put time, you might have a different outlook on it.
Right.
You know what I mean? If it's something that you actually booked into but I feel it's coming externally. It's not something you're actively going for. It's coming as an external addition. So like I was saying, like with the client and they're asking me to, having to do other stuff because it's coming externally and it's additional. It's not according to my expectations or what I was deliberately slotting in because I didn't give enough YOYÖ.
Yeah.
Right? Back to that YOYÖ concept. Because I wasn't doing that, now it's becoming a burden and I'm not able to enjoy, which repeatedly creates burnout.
Right, for sure. One kind of thing, and then how I kind of want to segue into like the next little topic of conversation here is like how you made that comparison between if you enjoyed it, then it wouldn't, burn you out, or it wouldn't like make you feel like you don't want to do it, or it wouldn't drain you, right? So on that notion, how do we sort of improve like with what we have going on so that perhaps burnout doesn't occur, or it occurs less frequently, or it occurs with less intensity? I think that also touches on, is burnout inevitable? I mean, okay.
As a creative, as a person, what is burnout?
Okay, yeah, actually, that's a hugely okay. All right, actually, let's tackle that first. Like, is it inevitable as a creative, or I mean, as a person, as a creative? Let's break that down. So
my thoughts on that is, one, let's go back to the definition of burnout: prolonged stress.
Right.
What is stress? Stress is something that you feel and that is created by your own mental state. And so to me, burnout is dictated by your own perception of life. Are you stressed? Is your life stressed?
Right.
Give you an example. I did a 180-degree turn the other day. I had a really bad day. I said, Danilo, I'm so stressed out right now. This is a burnout. Like, I reached my cap. Next morning, he calls me. He's like, are you doing okay? blah, blah, blah. And I literally tell him in the afternoon, that same afternoon, I'm like, dude, I don't want to lose to burnout. I'm done. I'm going to fight this. I chose fight. Right? Because my perception was, I'm thankful for what's happening right now. I can take the opportunity to delegate more tasks to you and to Rachel, and I can really take on what I need to take on. And really, if I just nail this, like I take a hammer and I nail every single one of these nails one by one, I can probably reach a point where I feel, again, a little bit more free, a little bit more with breathing, like more air, room to breathe. Sorry. So that's it's because it's my perception. My perception changed like that overnight because of the way that I felt, because I got a few good things done, and it generated motivation.
Right.
Which then, I'm sorry. I'm just defining burnout, because burnout to me is, like we said, prolonged stress, which is you like stress. I forgot the wording, but stress is self-inflicted.
So I'm looking at the diagram that I had pulled up earlier, and there is a differentiation between stress versus burnout, right? And so stress here is characterized by over-engagement, right? I would say that it's when you're pushed to a point that edges beyond the boundaries of your comfort zone.
Okay, but what is over?
Right?
So that's a question. See, that to me right there is where I find hard to make the distinctions, because
I think that's overstimulus, like something like overstimulus.
But what is overstimulus? Because we define what is over.
Right.
I'll give you an example. They talk about the guy who ran a mile under 5 minutes, I think, or 4 minutes. There was one guy that, like, they thought at the time, science said that your heart would blow up if you ran a mile under 4 minutes. I think that's what it was. Don't quote me on that. It might be 5 minutes. And no one would ever try that.
Right.
But then one day, one guy ran a mile under 4 minutes, and guess what? Everyone else started doing it after. Because the problem is that we are only as good as our own knowledge base right now.
For sure.
Kind of like what we were discussing earlier off camera. Your identity, like who you are as a person, is only defined by what you know right now and your experiences that you've had right now. And so to get to the next level, you need to push limits.
Right.
You need to break those limits.
Right.
And I think that's where I find hard. It's like, burnout for me, it's like, it's a good check. It's like a good, like, okay, this is my limit, but that's my limit currently. Can I break that? Can I up that limit?
This is true.
That's the way I see it. And that's why, like, it's been like, because the stress level just goes high. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. I manage. But is that a good thing? I don't know. I'm just saying that, like, that's how I'm seeing burnout.
Right. Like, compared to stress, which I said is over-engagement.
Right.
That sort of over-engagement produces like a response, right? Like, for example, like if you become stressed, you think to do something about it right away when you become stressed, or you don't and you internalize it, right? But burnout is more characterized, according to this here, it says characterized by disengagement, right? So using your example of, for example, you hitting your peak of stress and then thinking, okay, we're going to have to suspend the company for like a little bit, or kind of put a halt on things for like a little bit. That was you taking a immediate action in a response to hitting a peak level of stress. You know what I mean?
So you're saying that prolonged over stimulus or whatever,
right?
Is then, which is stress.
I think like when it comes to burnout, it's more you are in a state of prolonged stress. You know what I mean?
And stress is like over stimulus or over.
Stress is like over, like it's more like you said. I think earlier you said stress is more acute, right? I think burnout is the manifestation of chronic stress. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and obviously, like, for example, it's like you said, you become disassociated with it. That's signs of burnout.
Right.
So, like, for example, it's like not caring about your job.
Right. Or just, not enjoying the things that you used to enjoy. Or I guess that creates, that's more for creative burnout, I suppose. Well, not necessarily. But, again, the key thing here for burnout is disengagement, right? The fact that, and I remember that feeling like akin to, how I said I was like essentially just like mindlessly like going from one task to the next and just going, all right, what's next? All right, what's next? All right, what's next? And then before I knew it, I wasn't like enjoying the thing I was doing, right? You know what I mean? Like,
back to the question you said, is it inevitable?
That's...
What do you think? Is it inevitable?
Okay, well, by nature, I suppose it depends a lot on your environment and what you've signed up for. You know what I mean? There's so many things that can contribute. I think by this, like the society that we currently live in, I think it's something that everybody's going to have to face at some point, because,
So have to, okay, inevitable.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're not just, you don't come out of the womb and you're like, all right, I know exactly what my capacity for work is, and my capacity for accomplishing things is, and I know exactly what to do, right? And all the work like you said, all the work that goes into putting up a podcast or starting a YouTube, right? So much work goes into. I remember when I was trying to start a YouTube for the first time, and I stopped when one of the things I had to do was post a banner for the homepage. And I'm like, oh, and I have to create a banner? Like, oh man, Yeah. And at that point I was just like, screw this. Like, I'll just wait. And then like months later, I finally got it up, like months later.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So you're saying it for individuals in general, burnout's inevitable.
I would say that it is, yes, it is inevitable. It is something I think people are going to eventually have to face at some point in their lives.
Okay, what about creatives? Is it inevitable for creatives to experience creative burnout?
A creative to experience creative burnout?
Yeah.
I think so. I think the well of creativity has its limits, and you have to find some time to fill it up again, like once you run out. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. Your face is telling me that you have something to say about that, or that you have a contradictory or a contrasting point.
I'm going to play the devil's advocate, because this is all up theory. So let's make a comparison. They obviously say like your brain is like your muscle, is like a muscle, right? You need to work on your brain, you need to develop your brain, etc. And from what we discussed, I would argue that burnout is primarily caused by something that's internal in your brain, right? Because stress is self-inflicted and it's prolonged stress, and so you have the ability to be able to manage that burnout from occurring.
Right.
Now, if you were to go to the gym, what would you do if you wanted to get in shape? If you knew nothing about the gym and you had all the resources you could, probably hire a personal trainer, look up some YouTube videos. And what do they do? Again, I'm no personal trainer, I'm no expert, but I've done a lot of weight training in my life. And what do? They teach you, how to do certain reps properly, and how to do certain exercises, and they give you a plan.
Right.
Regardless of the meal plan, let's just talk about the physical aspect of it. They give you a plan, a weekly plan. Okay, so you're going to be doing like backs and these exercises these days, blah, blah, blah. And you're going to be doing like legs these days and chest these days kind of thing. Or, they'll do full bodies and kind of spread it out entire the week, depending on your training program, whatever, right?
Right.
But guess what's always in the program? Rest days.
Okay.
It would be, if you asked the personal trainer, said, hey, if I work out every single one of my muscles every day, will I see better progress? They would be like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
You're ludicrous. You're going to hurt yourself.
Really destroy your muscles.
And if you did that, you'd likely get injured. Likely.
Right.
And you would burn out. You'd get too fatigued. And guess what? A burnout to me, it's like as if you pulled a muscle. Because you become disengaged. You can't use it as well. And you need time to heal.
Okay, I really like that comparison. Okay.
So now what I'm saying is that it could be inevitable. It could be evitable.
Inevitable?
No, we could avoid it. Sorry.
Oh, it can be avoided. Okay.
It can be avoided if we had the training program. But there is no program for dealing with burnout, for putting on work on your plate, for achieving success, because we see the direct results of going to the gym and, pounding back, doing curls, doing barbells, running cardio.
Right.
I've seen the direct result of running on a consistent basis. I've now reached a pace of 5 minutes per 10 kilometers, which is amazing, right? You see that direct result, but there's also like break times that are included in that.
Right.
And there's programs like, I know that I wouldn't be like weight training every single day, every single muscle.
Right.
But do we have a plan to deal with the stuff that comes and creates stress? because stress is coming from so many other areas of our life.
Right.
Emotional stress. It's coming from work stress. It's coming from creative stress. So I think that we can avoid, but it's a lot more of a complex program that we need to put together.
For sure, yeah.
And we do need to include rest, and rest needs to be defined for ourselves, because we define rest. Because it's what's rest to me may not be rest to you. You could be watching the TV and that's rest to you, and I could be watching the TV and it's like the most intense show and I'm like, oh, I need to listen to this.
Yeah, and conversely, what could be stressful to me might be
Exactly
the most enjoyable thing to you.
Right. And that's why I say like it's very mindset driven, but going back to the enjoyment, the more room there is, the more like you're doing a healthy workout. And even if you're plateauing, you're still going to grow. You're still in a healthy habit. You're able to maintain that and sustain it on a more day-to-day basis, consistent basis. I feel like leads an overall amount of stress, because that's manageable stress on your body, right? Not overstimulus like we were talking about. So my argument is that it's avoidable. We just don't know how.
So I think the conclusion we're coming to here is that it's inevitable, but it can be manageable, right? I think. I don't
think it's inevitable. I'm saying literally we can avoid it if we knew how. We just don't know how yet.
That's true. Like when you put it that way, yeah. I think if we had more constructs and tools and techniques and again training on how to avoid it, like
stress, I'd say is inevitable for any progress to happen.
No, for sure.
But burnout. We're talking burnout.
Yeah.
We're talking like a pulled ligament. Yeah. We can avoid it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
for the most part.
That's the thing. You can have healthy stress, but I'm not sure if you can have healthy burnout. Like, can you? What do you think? Huh? Sorry?
I mean,
what do you think? Like, can you have like is there a positive aspect to burnout? What do you think?
I think from being able to acknowledge it is a positive of it, what you take from it and being like, okay, my body's telling me that this is not good for me. Or like for me, like being like, this is an opportunity to take things in a different direction.
Right.
I think that my dad has always told me this. He says, with every crisis comes opportunity. And I think this is the case with burnout, because burnout's a mini crisis, an internal crisis. So I think that the positive burnout may not be the actual experience, but what you take away from it.
I 100% agree with that, actually. Yeah. Just to kind of touch on that, like, and again, like you said, the actual experience of burnout isn't a positive, but the way you can move forward from it can be a positive. I suppose that's the most positive thing, right? Initially, I had originally written down that like the positive for burnout is like an indicator, like you gain an indicator of your body's limits, or like a cue for like your body to tell you, all right, this is as much as you can take, and you better do something about it, or you got to do something about it, right? But I'm beginning to think after what you just said that might not necessarily be. I mean, I think it's still a valid statement, but I don't think it's the healthiest way to discover what your limits and your capacity are, right?
Yeah, for me, it's like, again, I go back to the weight training aspect, but like, for example, let's say you're trying to really break a certain weight, you're trying to bench more weight, right? And you get to like 1.5 plates or 1 plate and 25, and you're really plateauing, and you're like, ugh, like I can't get this.
Yeah.
Are you just going to stop because you're hitting a plateau? No, but because you don't want to push past those limits, I feel like that's not a good idea. It's not comfortable. It's never comfortable. I've done weight trainings where I'm like literally trying to do a max rep, and you're just like, this is the worst feeling ever. Yeah. Especially like squats. I hate squats. The feeling on my back when when you have like 4 plates on each side, it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. So, but it's not a comfortable feeling getting out of your comfort zone. Something we kind of talked about off air, but I think that's what I mean. It's like burnout can be a good experience in the sense of like, okay, this is my limit. What can I do to improve that limit? What can I do to up that limit?
Right.
How can I, you don't want to ever go too far past that limit, but I think you do have to go past the limit to be able to like, okay, this is where I'm playing. This is the area, the margin of error where I can play within, right? Yeah,
I mean, you know what they say, you're like, your comfort zone is nice, but you're not going to do any growing there.
No, right? And yeah, I think that, Yeah, I think that there's always room for improvement, and it's about like upping that threshold, which is kind of what I've been doing, which is not necessarily about, again, I'm not dedicating a lot of time to balance out. So maybe I'd be able to up that threshold a lot faster if I was taking more time to. So yeah, it's I think it's a good reminder to be like, okay, I can't do this anymore, right?
And to put things into context, I mean, like here we are nearing the end of March, and for us, it had been, we were kind of like using March as sort of like a break. Right? You know what I mean?
So much for that.
Your face is telling me something else.
I mean, the intention was to take a break.
Yeah.
With AWMI. It just didn't feel like a break.
I would say, I would say it's not like it didn't. It's not like it was a break. It was more so a toning down of the intensity, so that we could allow some more room for our minds to sort of. Okay, maybe
add more shit onto our table.
Well, definitely.
Oh my God.
Well, definitely, it was really funny because like in January we were very gung ho over what we were doing because we felt like we hit 2021. We hit the ground running. We did, right? And then a month later, we're just like, holy crap, what are we doing? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it was mainly due to me. But again, it's like when March started slowing down, then we started having more discussions about other things, and you know, we filled up that time really quickly. So I think I think what we're trying to wrap up this podcast episode with is what have we actually learned from our experience burning out? And I don't think that I'm out of it, to be honest, but what are we learning here? I think that one, more energy needs to be dedicated to internalizing our successes. I think that's one key takeaway. How do we do that? No idea. Let's just get drunk every time we post a podcast.
You know what? Honestly, like everything in moderation. If you gotta take a shot for yourself, like go ahead. Why not? I mean, it's sometimes people find comfort in that, but in moderation. Like don't.
20 shots. Let's go. Yeah, I also think that. Awareness. Being aware, self-aware, because again, like we mentioned, what stresses you out may not stress me out.
Right.
Being self-aware of that, being aware of like, hey, I'm not enjoying this anymore. What's going on? And it's not about like being like, I'm not enjoying this anymore, so let's stop doing this. Let's being like, okay, what am I not enjoying? Why am I not enjoying this? And what can I do about it? Is this something that I want to continue pursuing, or do I need a break? Right. And if I'm going to take a break, then what does that break look like? I feel like defining rest and appreciation is something we have to put in as much intensity and dedication to as we do to our tasks and our failures.
For sure. And like, you know, that ties into the point I was going to make about like what we learned, because like, and you stated earlier that you kind of feel like you're still in burnout.
100%.
I think I kind of stand in the opposite end of the spectrum. I kind of feel like I've recovered. You know what I mean?
Oh, well, you're no longer part of this company.
You must be in a state of burnout to be healthy.
Yeah. you don't fit the requirements. I'm sorry, bro, but I'm going to have to.
But I do feel like, for sure, as compared to how I was just a couple of weeks ago, or even just like in mid-February, I definitely feel like I have a lot more vigor in terms of like the energy I can put towards tasks and my enjoyment of them. And I think the most valuable thing that I've learned is to listen to my body.
What's in that coffee? Do you mind if I drink your coffee? Because clearly yours has something in it that I don't have.
And again, like the most important takeaway from this was like, you know, when I was experiencing burnout, I realized that it was because I was not listening to the cues, or not giving energy to your body saying, I think you're overwhelmed, bro. You should probably do something about that, until it got to the point where I couldn't do anything about it. And like my body had to generate. I feel like that panic attack was my body's way of saying, all right, we're taking the reins back since you won't stop working yourself. You know what I mean? So I'm at the point now where, and I'm not saying that like I'm like actively like, you know, going out of my way to make a lot of, because I remember one of those things that we had touched on was like the fact that like we didn't know how to say no. We had a hard time.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah.
And I feel like as of late, I think we've been more clear on whether or not we will have the energy. Remember the other time where we were supposed to go for a run, but you and I had we had some potential engagements that we could have gone to the night prior, but we didn't because we both understood that, hey,
True that.
we made time for this run and what we were supposed to do on Saturday, and that's what we're sticking to, right? Because for either of us, it would have been a late night, right?
And I think, I don't want to dive into another topic. I think that's a huge point. And I think I was listening to a podcast by Tom Bilyeu. It's about setting boundaries.
Right.
And boundaries is a huge topic. And hopefully we'll be able to tackle that on another Coffee Chats episode, or maybe with someone who's had some experience with it.
For sure.
But I think we've had an incredible discussion today. Considering this is a new setup, I'm really hoping that all our gear was recording properly. I do, obviously this was a longer episode, so whoever has listened to this entire episode, appreciate you guys. This was an incredible discussion, not gonna lie.
I'd say so.
And it feels way more authentic in person, so we'll hopefully be doing this more and more.
And I can say I enjoyed it. Like, I'm not saying, I can say I'm not in burnout because I'm sitting here saying, like, I actually had a blast talking about this, and I'm not disengaged, like, actually, you know what I mean? So
maybe let's go take a shot. Like,
well, you were asking what was in my coffee, man. So
oh, that's where it's at. Okay. So lesson of the day: drink more alcohol. Just kidding. Clearly, this is not a professional podcast. All right, just joking. But thank you so much for listening. Whoever has listened, if you guys haven't subscribed or followed us on Spotify, follow us on Spotify. Subscribe to us on YouTube. It makes a world of a difference. If you guys are engaged with this topic, if you guys relate to anything that we have mentioned today, leave us a comment. Like, we can't read your mind, and we want to know if we're insane or if we're normal. I feel like we're pretty normal, but we got a lot of issues apparently.
Yeah.
But so drop a like, drop a comment, let us know, tag us on Instagram. All the links will be in the description below. I don't know if there's anything you want to leave off with.
No, I'm good, man. I think you said it all. I think we said it all, or all we could.
Yeah. And I mean, these discussions never end, but we're going to wrap this one up. Thank you so much for listening again to another episode of Within, to our segment, Coffee Chats. And as per usual, we're going to end it off with a cheers that we can actually do in person.
All right. Cheers, bro.
And we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Another shot down.
Let's go.